It's just after noon Central Time, which means it's my privilege to welcome you to today's Alumni Career Webinar, Leveraging LinkedIn, with presenter Daisy Swan. My name is Maggie Almarakvi, and I'm the Assistant Director for Career Programs here at the Alumni Association. Our office is committed to helping provide alumni with the resources they need to stay competitive in an ever-changing job market and support the alumni community with career resources, networking channels, and job search capabilities. It's my privilege to introduce you to our presenter today, UChicago alumna and career coach Daisy Swan. For the past 24 years, Daisy has helped clients to discover their most authentic way of living and working. Her book, Making Work Work, Secrets from a Career Coach's Office, was published in 2012. Known for her whole person coaching style, Daisy has worked with thousands of clients from a wide array of professional and creative fields, as well as countries, working in person, remotely, and in class settings, guiding clients to find satisfying and strategic ways to manage their careers, or to reconnect to their interests and values to find new, successful, and fulfilling ways of living and working. Daisy holds a bachelor's degree from Loyola University in Chicago and a master's degree from the University of Chicago. Today's webinar will highlight what LinkedIn is all about and why it is so important for you and for the life of your career. Now, let's get to the reason you've all joined today, and let me welcome Daisy.
Thanks so much. It's really a pleasure to be able to join everyone here today. We have a lot of information to go over, and I do hope that if people have questions that they'll share them with Maggie, and she'll send them to me, or be able to share them during the program or at the end. I do think we're going to cover a lot of what people ask me about, my clients, and I've worked with so many people who have been a little bit reticent about jumping into LinkedIn because they feel like it's just so exposing. But that's kind of the way things work in our world now. We really have to be out there managing our brand. So anyway, we'll talk about this as we go along. So Maggie, I think I'm in share mode now. So
yes, that's correct. You should be sharing.
Okay, so what we're going to cover today are some of the essentials and a lot more. So why is LinkedIn important for you? And what can LinkedIn do for you? What are the features that you need to be aware of, and how can you make the most of them? So let's talk about why it's important. Okay, we all know we are living in such a fast-changing, volatile climate. So it's really up to us to use this tool to manage our current or future job search. We're also in charge of our own brand, as we put it. You are your own business. And so you really need to be able to put out there what you have to offer and really know what you have to offer. LinkedIn can really help with that. So I know I'm on the line with a lot of University of Chicago people who are very smart and able. And I also know that there are a lot of introverts out there and extroverts. And so particularly for my introverted clients, LinkedIn can really feel just overwhelming and a real violation of their privacy. You know, this is a world where who you know is very important. So with the right privacy tools and settings, you can make this work for you so you feel more comfortable. Okay, job searches oftentimes rely on these great job search engines. However, anybody can see what's on a job search engine, and we want you to be a little more savvy than that so that you can find the positions through your network that have never even been posted. And you may not fit into a neat box. I know I never did. And so it's very much about making your own job in a lot of cases, which gives a lot of us tremendous creativity and control. So you want to be able to pitch yourself and your skills to people out there who you may find on LinkedIn. Okay, so some basics about Facebook, about LinkedIn. Facebook we can think of as a party with friends. LinkedIn is more like a professional conference. It's a meeting place where we're going to present ourselves professionally and share what we can professionally about our insights and information. I love LinkedIn as an incredible search engine for research. You can learn so much about organizations and the people who work in them. You can learn about jobs. You can start to put together your own job description. It's just a phenomenal research tool. It's also increasingly becoming a media source. This could be our next the Wall Street Journal. There's so many trends that people are writing about through their Pulse. That's where they're posting. Anybody can post an article they'd like to share. It's really remarkable. And it's a place to meet others with similar interests and career paths. So you can use the groups as a tremendous resource. And we'll talk about how to use them. Okay, so because we're in such connected environments, more and more recruiters are relying on social media to find people. Now, for years, people have been talking about how resumes are going to become obsolete. I don't know if I really buy it personally, because they've been so entrenched in our society. But I will say that more and more, and I hear this from friends who are recruiters, more and more recruiters are finding people on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. So they're really starting to understand who's out there and who's using these more technological means of being found. Employers are looking for the total package in people. They want to find people who know how to write, people who know how to use technology, and people who know how to communicate both, verbally and non-verbally. So we know University of Chicago people have all of those great skills. But using LinkedIn is really a great indicator that you're on top of it in all of these areas. So I really encourage you to use these, this tremendous tool. So what this does is the more people are using these, the more connected they can be to others, and that's where the resume starts to become obsolete, meaning that it can become more of a formality. Your relationships really pave the way for your job search. Okay, so this is sort of beating the horse here, but the dead horse. But people are comfortable hiring people they do business with, and think about it. We're always more comfortable working and going out with people we have a connection with. It's how we vet somebody, right? And even in finding work and dating, there are a lot of parallels, right? So we vet people through these different sources. Okay, so what features can you make the most of? We're going to go through a bunch of these. So obviously your profile, which is made up of your photo and your background, you can put all sorts of other important information, your videos, your websites, your articles. Using this for job search, we do have the free LinkedIn services, and then of course there's the premium, which is paid. I think it's like $29 a month. And I've been using it just to see, what this really does for me. I'm not in a job search, but I like to see what they do. And they send me positions because I'm using this tool all the time with clients. I receive all sorts of job postings from them because they don't really know what I'm looking for, because I keep looking for so many different types of things. So that's an interesting premium. And then you'll come up featured more prominently when somebody looks at your resume if you do have the premium. Other features, groups. So we'll talk about this, how to ask questions in groups, how to use the groups. Really a treasure trove of information and a great way to connect with people. And you can be writing those updates. You can write status updates on a regular basis. So I did a status update, which all of my friends and colleagues saw, that said I was doing this webinar. So this is one of the ways that we stay in front of people, with those status updates. And then, of course, pulse articles, which personally I'll be making more use of that in the future. And again, I mentioned the privacy concerns. There are settings that can be used. So those features, all of these features are really important. So let's start with talking about the profile. So your picture is really important. I sometimes I'm kind of a LinkedIn geek, so I love to take a look and see how people are portraying themselves through their photos. And I must say, people are doing such a much better job than they were for a while there. You know, you're looking for a great headshot. Somebody, you know, every now and then you'll see people who are looking away from the camera. That's one way of going about it. But I do think it's really nice to have a headshot looking directly at the camera, connecting with the people who are looking at you. And you want it to be professional. It's professional, but it doesn't have to be a suit and tie. It needs to be appropriate to the kinds of work and the environment that you're in. Your title should be more aligned with who you are versus your company and your title. Because, let's face it, chances are you're going to be on your own at some point, or transferring to a different company and having a different kind of title. So let's be flexible about it. Okay, your summary. This is going to always take thought and planning, and a lot of clients are concerned about, you know, if I'm trying to transition from one thing to another, what do I put there? So we do want to pull out the things that are relevant to where you want to go. So that's why it's important to know your keywords that you want to have stand out to all kinds of readers. So I just wanted to give you an example. Of course, I'm going to use mine, my profile here. I have a lot of things that I do, so you can see I have quite a few things in my title. There are categories, so I'm in the category of professional training and coaching. And then, again, because I do several things, you'll see I have several company names there. It's showing my education as UCLA because that was where I did my most recent continuing education. So you can see this is what I was talking about, the headshot, and whoops, let me go back. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, and then you can see the background starts right below that. Okay, so I'm going to mention this. The LinkedIn email address, you can create a simple email address that you can add onto your resume, which would be in addition to your regular email address. What this does on your resume is it helps your resume, whoever's reading your resume, go to that site, and then they'll have an optimized, visible resume of you. So let's see. Sorry, a screenshot of you. So if they go to, if you can see this here right underneath my photo, there's my LinkedIn email address. So that means that they can pull up all of the information about you, which will be a whole lot more than what's on your resume. Okay, so again, on your profile, you'll want your resume highlights. You can put them on with bullets, or you can do more with the paragraph style. And you can also attach your resume to your profile if you'd like. So you can see here on my profile, I'm using more of a paragraph style. Down below here, I have more of a bulleted style. And so you can see here that there are recommendations that will fall right into each section. Okay, and a word about recommendations, and we do want you to be including those, at least 5. I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, add publications. Anything that you can add to round out your profile. It's really a great thing to do. So any of your additional interests, volunteer involvements, is perfect to go on there. Okay, so recommendations and endorsements. So the thing with the endorsements, these endorsements are kind of funny because they're all of these skills that will show up based on the different things that you've done in your career. LinkedIn adds them, makes them available for people to endorse you. And you can add as many skills as you want onto your profile. I believe I can get to that on my screenshot and show you that. So LinkedIn says that your profile will be seen, or is 4 times more likely to be viewed by recruiters if you include recommendations and endorsements. And now I know that there are many recruiters who want to see a minimum of 5 recommendations. So those can be from colleagues, they can be from people who have reported to you, as well as your supervisors or people you've reported to. So getting endorsements and having those. Okay, so I just wanted to show you, here's where I've shared publications, and you can see here's the beginning of the endorsements that I've received. You can manage this by scrolling down to the bottom of your endorsements, and you can manage the skills that are there. So you can add skills that you'd like people to be able to endorse you for, and you can also manage them. So if you want to take some off because you're not getting enough endorsements that way, take them off, and then perhaps people will pay more attention to some of the others. Okay, you know, and I'm going to go back for a sec. In terms of these endorsements, one of the things you might consider doing if you want to get endorsements and you'd like to get recommendations, offer to give them to others, right? So if you pull up some people in your LinkedIn connections and you'll see the different areas that you can endorse them for, go ahead and endorse folks. That's what this is all about. And so you want to pay it forward, and something may come back to you. You can also reach out to people and ask for recommendations. I've had many of my clients do that, and I have to say time and again people will ask them to write the recommendation. We're probably all familiar with this. Write the recommendation that you'd like to see, and they will then edit it or put their own stamp on it and then post this. So these recommendations aren't something that people can write in a doc and then that you upload. They really have to do it from within the LinkedIn platform. The endorsements, as you're on LinkedIn, those will pop up. This might be a little bit basic for some of you who have been using this already, but I know that there are people out there who haven't been using this so much. Okay, so controlling who you invite. You have control over who you invite. I'm saying this because a lot of my clients have been concerned, like, oh, it's going to raid my contacts. I believe there is a way that LinkedIn can raid your contacts if you allow them to. They can't do it if you don't allow them to. So if you're just new to this and you're signing up, manage it the way you want to, invite who you want. Just be sure that you pay attention to your privacy settings. Okay. Joining groups is a great thing to do. I have joined so many groups because my clients come from so many different areas of commerce, and being a part of the groups has enabled me to connect with that many more people, see what that many more people are doing in all walks of professional life. So going to the groups tab will show you just how many things are out there, and I'm going to go to a screenshot in a sec. Okay, so then there's really about, people say, well, okay, if I'm a second or third connection, which is what you'll be if you're in a group with someone, you'll still need to become a first connection with them if you really want to be able to use those links more efficiently. So how do you invite someone to be a connection or use that connection to do an informational interview? So here I just wanted to show you under the interests, this is on that top bar there. So you'll see you can be checking out companies, you can be checking out groups. You've got all of these different options here. So, I mean, there are thousands of groups by so many different interests. So the way that you would reach out to people for those connections, we want you to be doing that the right way. Now, I will tell you, I receive requests to connect to people every day, and it's just, a notice pops up and says so-and-so would like to connect with you. They don't tell me why they'd like to connect with me, so a lot of times I can't connect those dots. If it looks like somebody who I'm interested in that case, then maybe I will, maybe I won't. But if somebody writes to me and says, I'm impressed by the work that you do, I'd love to talk to you about your experiences, or oftentimes I've written to people. I actually did this on behalf of my son who was looking for an internship when he was in high school. If you write to somebody and really tell them why you're interested in connecting with them, most people are happy to do it. I will say, I've had clients who have had great success that way, reaching out to people with a nice note, and oftentimes people are just too busy. So please don't take it personally if you don't hear back from somebody. So here's a sample invitation. I found your profile while researching. I'm actually not able to see all of this. There we go. So researching on people with a background in market research. So you can see, basically, this is what I was talking about, reaching out to somebody and asking them for a 10 to 20 minute conversation. Then we really want you to be ready to do an informational interview, and that's another thing. But this is a great way to reach out to people. We don't want you reaching out to people and saying, I'm looking for a job in your company. Can you help me? that's going to turn people off. So we're always asking for information about a career path. Okay. I'm kind of curious if there are any questions coming in, but I know Maggie will let me know. Okay, premium, the paid subscription. You can upgrade, and they will send you jobs based on your job search activities. You'll also be able to see the salary range, and so it's kind of interesting that they'll send you that information. So they'll be able to tell you what a particular position will be looking for in terms of salary. And you'll come up higher in the list when recruiters are receiving the resumes. By the way, I will say you can apply to positions via LinkedIn, and you will also see recruiters posted, usually on the sidebar when positions are, if you're looking at a position listing. However, I always recommend that people also send a hard copy. I just think it's a good idea because a lot of things, I don't know why, but they do end up in a black hole. So it's a good idea to send a hard copy as well. So that means writing a great cover letter along with your resume. Don't just think that you can shoot off a resume. But that's job search stuff. Okay. More information is available about this premium upgrade on the site. So, okay, one of the things that you get with a premium service, and I'm not trying to sell this to you, you can absolutely stay on LinkedIn for free and use it to great use. So don't think that you have to spend this $30 a month to get a lot of value out of LinkedIn. But you will receive these in-mails that you can use, meaning that even if you don't have a connection with people you want to be able to connect with, you can send them an in-mail. I think you get 5 a month or something like that. So the reason I have this in red here is be ready if you're using these. I would really want you to be able to say something meaningful to the person that you're reaching out to. This might be somebody who's quite a bit more senior to you. Can be a great way of finding a mentor. Maybe if you're, let's say you're a millennial and you have an insight into something that's important to this person, maybe you can offer them something valuable to them in exchange for getting information for you. Okay, using groups effectively. So there are all sorts of conversations going on, and you'll see there's a lot of people posting questions. This is a great way to, one, put yourself out there in terms of putting a question out there, but also answering a question. I've used this to get information about, I was considering another graduate degree, so I reached out in a particular group and followed a conversation about different programs, and then I finally reached out and asked a clarifying question, and then ended up connecting with a whole group of people. So it's a valuable place to go with real questions. I've had many clients use these to ask for resources and suggestions as they've been trying to do career change. So it's a great way to build your network and get information at the same time. Okay, so you create this great network. And what happens a lot of times is, and I see this time and again with clients who come to me who were sort of lulled into thinking that they would be fine in their job forever. Nobody is, Nobody is secure. Hate to say it, but we all need to be able to connect with people at a moment's notice. So staying up to date with your connections, even if you're happily employed, is really important, and for lots of reasons. I mean, you can learn all sorts of things about what's going on in the world of your business and other businesses, and who knows, you may find new partnerships, you may find new companies to enhance what you're doing. So you really want to let this be that safety net for you. So make a plan to reach out with people. I mean, you know, it's possible that you're one of those people who is just, you know, really working, you know, head down, really focusing on what you're doing, and you think, oh, I'm not going to reach out to people on a regular basis. I don't need to. I would suggest that you rethink that. Okay, even if you haven't been in touch, and I hear this from people all the time, oh, how can I reach out to people I haven't talked to in so long? It's okay. You can, just as this slide shows here, you know, send out an email and say, hi, I'm making an effort to reconnect with old friends and colleagues. You know, what's happening in your world, or, you know, what challenges are you facing? You know, whatever it is that is your way of saying this, check in with people. They'll probably be happy to hear from you. So, managing your brand. One of the great things to do is write an article. You know, take your insights from whatever it is that you're doing. Even if you're not working right now, you can write updates about what it's like not to be working. There have been some really interesting posts about what people are finding as they've been in transition. You can also post status updates. And you know, on my feed, I see a lot of people who are very actively doing that. And you know, like any other kind of marketing, this is a way that people stay in front of people. So if you are thinking about making a transition, this may be a little bit awkward for you because you don't want some people to see what your updates are, right? And I get this question quite a bit, and if I don't want my boss to see what I'm up to. Now, one of the things is if you're doing this all the way through your career trajectory, your bosses won't think that this is odd for you to be staying in front of people. If all of a sudden you start posting a lot and changing a lot of things on your profile, yes, that might raise some flags. But again, you can select your privacy settings to take care of that issue. So a little bit more about Pulse. As I mentioned, it is a media outlet, and it can boost your visibility. A lot of interesting responses to a lot of articles. And there's that information about the status updates. And again, about your privacy settings. So you can continue to add new skills, education, all sorts of different involvements. And again, so long as you let your employers see from the get-go that this is how you take care of yourself professionally, this shouldn't raise any eyebrows. So I think that it's all incumbent upon all of us to make it clear that, you know, we're independent contractors. Some of us are salaried independent contractors, but we really all have to take care of ourselves. We just really never know what's going to happen in commerce. So we have some time for questions and answers, and I know some of you may have very specific questions. And I'm happy to see what we can do to answer those. But if it's something that you think, oh, I don't know if I should ask this, maybe this was covered already, or maybe this is going to sound like a silly question, please don't worry about that. We really like to be able to help people learn as much as possible about this really powerful service that's out there to the world. So, Maggie, if there's some questions that have come in, do you want to share those?
Yeah, so we've definitely had quite a few questions come in, so I'll try to break these down a little bit chronologically based on your presentation.
And I can scroll back if you need.
Okay. To start, I'd love to hear your thoughts. When somebody is writing their summary on their profile, what's the best way to do research on the keywords and phrases that they might want to include?
Great question. So what I like to have people do is research the types of positions they think they're interested in. And so LinkedIn is a great place to do that research. So if you go to the Jobs tab, and let me scroll back. To make anybody dizzy here. But, sorry. So if you go to the Jobs tab, you can, okay. So you can go to jobs, and that will pull up jobs in particular, right? So you can do a job search using this jobs tab and go to the site and put in any sort of key word search that you want. Let's say it's, for example, program manager or engineer. And then you can put in specifics in terms of location. Another thing you can do is, let's say you can use this as the drop-down menu, and you can pull up people. So you use that as a job search, as a search tab. You'll see you can then put in, let's say, a title. So let's say it's engineer. It's going to show you people who have engineer in their title. What we want you to be able to do is find the keywords that are in their profile so that you can understand, or your employer will be, potential employer will be able to understand that you have those key skills as well. So same thing for the job descriptions. If you pull up a job description that you want, you'll be able to see what are the qualifications they're looking for. What's the skill set they're looking for? So I think that should answer that question. And then you'll want to, so to speak, pepper your summary with many of those keywords and skills. This is also a great way to find out what you might need to learn. And don't be intimidated by this. Just take it as information. It's just information. It's what you do with it that counts, right? So, I encourage many of my clients to go get remedial skills so that they're a better candidate.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of moving down the page a little bit, we had a question come in that I thought was interesting about your title and formulating your title. So perhaps the best thing is not to put your current job title with your current employer, but something more general that speaks to really what you do in your career. What if you've sort of served in different levels based on the size of the organization? What's the best way to formulate a title that really encompasses what you do without using maybe a specific word like vice president or director or something like that?
Yeah, great question also. So maybe it's innovative executive. Innovative does get used a lot, so don't beat me up. But it could be senior executive. It could be, let's see, leader. So it could be senior leader of technology teams, something like that. So, one of the things that can help you if you're a little bit stuck is look around for people who you know, who you admire. You might want to be anonymous when you're doing this, and that's one of the settings you can play with in your privacy settings if you don't want people to see that you're looking at them. Sometimes you do, but this is a side thing. Sometimes you do want people to see that you're looking at them so that they'll look back at you, but sometimes you don't want people to see that you're looking at them. That's okay. So you can research how are they describing themselves. So you can, play around with different combinations that, until you hit something that feels right for you. So I was just working with a client, and we did a little bit of research because his division, well, his company was purchased. And so after 25 years of moving up the ranks, he was suddenly out of a job. And so that's exactly what we did. We looked at other people like him, and we also took his specific skills and strengths through other means and crafted a good title for him.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the next couple of questions that we had come in were regarding recommendations. So I have two questions. First question is, do you have any advice for people on the best way to ask for recommendations? We had somebody specifically submit a question saying that a lot of his coworkers don't use recommendations on their LinkedIn profile, and he's not sure how to approach them to ask them to write them for him. And then secondly, what happens if you've reached out to somebody for a recommendation and it comes in and it's on your profile, but perhaps it's not as flattering or it doesn't necessarily speak to the skills that you'd really like to be presenting on your profile? Is it appropriate to remove the recommendation from your profile? Should you follow up with that person, or should you just make an effort to kind of get a few more that might be more prominent on your profile?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to start with the second part of that question first, because that's such a good, compelling question. Yeah, I think obviously that's a little bit of a pickle, and I'm sorry you're in it. But if that's the case, and you have a good relationship with that person, then you might want to talk to them about it. If I'm getting the sense that that's not the case, so if you can get others that you can put on there, that's what I would do, is ask other people to add some. And one of the things that you can do in the future that you might not have done with that person is specifically highlight what you'd like them to include. Everybody's busy, and so it's almost like you can head this off at the pass by, writing to them or talking to them and then writing to them and saying, I know you're really busy, and so I really appreciate you writing a recommendation. Here are the things I'm most proud of and would love to have included in a recommendation. And if it would be helpful for you, I'm happy to draft something for you. If you're comfortable doing that, I think that's a great way to go. Otherwise, I don't think it's too smart to remove a recommendation. I think somebody could feel really unhappy about that. A little bit. Yeah, that's. I don't think that's the way we want to go. The first question you asked me, can you repeat that one for me, Maggie?
Yeah, just if you have general advice for somebody who their network doesn't seem to use recommendations very heavily, or maybe their immediate coworkers don't have much of a presence on LinkedIn, but he would like to build his up by getting some of those recommendations on his profile.
Yeah, so that's okay. If other people don't use them, they're probably going to get smart when they see that you are. So you can set the example. So yeah, just reaching out to people and saying, I've been talking to a lot of people, and put it on someone else. You can say I've been talking to a lot of people, and they've been recommending. I put some recommendations on my profile. So if you're game, I would really appreciate. I'd really appreciate it if you do that. And again, then you can go forward with what I was saying about if you'd like me to draft something, I'm happy to do it. Or you can give them some ideas of maybe some particular projects that you worked on, and have a sense of humor about it. I mean, nobody really wants to ask anybody to do this stuff. These are things that we deal with in the 21st century. So I just have a lot of sense of humor about all of it, because we're all just kind of playing this game, right? We're in a show-off society. A lot of us do not like this, but this is how business is done now. So if you can go with more of a light way of treating this, I think that's a good idea. And you can also say I'd be happy to reciprocate and do one for you.
Great. And to that last point you made, we did have a question come in that I thought was interesting. You would recommend then reciprocating if somebody writes you a recommendation, maybe write one for him or her. Have you ever, in your experience, found that maybe a recruiter finds that to be a little bit transparent or less genuine, or do you think that that's just indicative of having a close relationship with that, say, coworker or colleague?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, really. The latter, that I don't think that recruiters have a lot of time to. I mean, yes, some might dig deeper and see who you're connected with and all that, and follow up on who gave you a recommendation and whatnot. But if you have enough recommendations and you haven't recommended everybody, but you know what, really, it is true. I've recommended a lot of people, and by the way, you can recommend a lot of people who may not come back and give you a recommendation. But that's just showing that people want to do that for you. And so, no, I don't think that's that big of an issue. I know, what was it, on Yelp, a lot of people were getting in trouble because they were doing that, and there was a big scam that showed up on Yelp about that. But I think this is a little bit different.
Great, thank you. We also had a couple of questions come in about the amount of information that you should include on the job summary portion of your profile. Should you be including more information than you would on a traditional resume, less information? Should they be complementary to each other and potentially include different information on both? Do you have a recommendation for that?
Yeah, I think that the great thing about LinkedIn, I've looked at so many profiles, and people really do put their own voice into the summary. So some of them are going to be first person, some of them are third person. Mine is third person, but I've seen a lot of executives do a first person summary, which gives kind of a friendlier feel to who this person is. And in that way, it is different than a resume, and it is covering slightly different information than what's on the resume. It's a different voice, so to speak. And and then there are people who actually minimize their information and might just have key skills. I think that's not using the summary well enough. But do keep in mind, it is a summary. So, we don't want it to be too long. Mine might be a little long, personally. But you can also you can check out other people who might have similar background or be in a similar area to you. I think a lot of it is what you're comfortable with sharing about yourself and how you want to be known. And, that's what I was saying about really managing our own brand. We really do need to know, how do I want people to know me? What's appropriate for my world, and what feels right for me. So I hope that's helpful. I know everybody's situation, everybody's background is different, um, but I do think this is a place where you can really show up as a human being, and talk about your strengths in the professional world, and really highlight them there.
Great, thank you. So that definitely kind of gave us a good idea of what we should be looking for in our summary, but specifically when you're listing previous positions, um, what would you recommend there? Is it just bulleting highlights of maybe accomplishments when you were in that position, or should we go a little bit more in depth than maybe we would on a resume?
Yeah, well, one of the things you can do is you could highlight, and again, this depends on what you're trying to get across, but let's say you highlight some specific projects you've worked on. Or so what you really want to be able to do to set yourself apart is not just describe things you've done with the skill set, but also highlight real results. Now, you can definitely do that on your resume, and I always want clients to highlight results on their resumes. But you can really talk about a challenge and how you overcame it, or you can talk about what your results were. So again, see what's going to be most to the point. That's also where, let's say, maybe you want to reference a project, or and using bullets. You can use bullets just as you might in a resume, but then maybe there's something you can add on, a website that you can add on. Maybe there's some other sort of visual. Maybe there's an article or a white paper that fits in with a project you've done. Maybe you were quoted in an article. There's so many different variables that you can add into your experience. So I think, again, keeping in mind what those key words are also, based on your earlier research that you would have done, you can add those into those bullets. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And then the next couple of questions we have coming in are for a little bit more specific situations, but I think that, we might all find ourselves in them at one point or another. The first is maybe you're currently thinking about two different career paths. You're thinking of potentially a career in the nonprofit world and also, something maybe in advertising, marketing, or sales, for example. What is the best way to strike a balance on your profile? Do you recommend kind of sticking with one, or is it best to maybe highlight them in different sections? Do you have clients who have been in this position, or do you have recommendations for those individuals?
Yes, I knew right where you were going as soon as you started. So some of the things, like specific to if you were doing the nonprofit and the for-profit, or sales and advertising and nonprofit, you can show your interests. So let's say perhaps there's not a lot of nonprofit experience. Maybe what you need to do, if you're not already, is get more involved with some nonprofits and show that in the companies or organizations you're following, or show that by your involvement as a board member or a volunteer at some organization. You can also talk about yourself in your summary that way. So you might highlight your sales and marketing experience, but highlight your interests in certain fields, let's say certain nonprofit issues. So that's one of the places you can really use that summary to your advantage. I think that's also where sometimes it is going to be a tricky thing where we want to show off the keywords, pulling out the important keywords, but being able to explain to the people, if you're making a really radical career change, which people do, and you don't have certain experience, this is where this networking is so vitally important, because you want to reach out to people and be able to explain to them what it is you're trying to do and ask for their help. Now, in some of those situations, if you're really making a big change, understand that you may be looking at a change from one position to another. So you may, as some people call this, you may be looking at a lily pad job or a bridge job, meaning that you're going to use this next job as a way to get to the position that you'd really like to be in. So, you know, our careers don't go in a straight line. They're very circuitous. We have a belief that we should be on an upward trajectory all the time, and that's just not really how it works, especially, you know, in this very volatile world that we're in. And we're living, breathing organisms that change, and so our interests change, and people do this stuff. So don't think you're the only one out there making this kind of change. So, you know, be as creative as you can in bringing those keywords and interests into your profile.
I think that's a great reminder to all of us, and we have just a couple minutes left here, so I'd love to squeeze in one more question with you, Daisy. But we do have quite a number that have come in otherwise, so if you're agreeable, I'd love to send those to you following the presentation, and hopefully we can get everybody's questions addressed.
Sure.
Just as a final question, we had this come in a variety of different ways. You know, maybe somebody is a stay-at-home parent currently but would like to get back into the workforce, or has been out of work and is working in consulting just to kind of fill the gap and working on different projects. Do you have recommendations generally for the best way to represent yourself on your LinkedIn profile if you're actively seeking work and you're not currently employed? Are there certain things that you have found have been more helpful to your clients than others who are in that situation?
Yeah, I think, you know, the first thing is kind of attitudinally. It's okay if you have been out of the job force for a while, the workforce for a while. My guess is whatever you've been doing, you've been busy doing it. And so it's really important for us to not get caught in that real comparathon thing of, you know, everybody else is so much better off than me. You have skills, and so it's really important to highlight those in your summary and your experience. Now, even if you've taken time off, you can even say in your summary, you know, returning to a creative workforce position, or get kind of creative about how you're talking about what you want to do. And you can use the experience that you had prior to taking that step out. I mean, because this is different for each person, you know, I've gotten creative with clients in lots of different scenarios, but the networking becomes that much more important, because people need to understand why you were out, and then you can build your network, get advice from people. With each person you talk to, you want to ask for advice about how to re-enter. And, you know, people do favors for people. People are happy to introduce people to other people if they feel safe doing that, if they feel they can trust you. Find places you can volunteer, you know, and maybe you were volunteering, then don't be afraid to use that as your experience. Don't feel like you have to apologize for that. So you don't have to call that volunteer experience, you can just call that experience in your profile. So there's a lot of ways around that, but it may mean, if you're re-entering, that you need to push yourself to get out there and do some volunteer things, while you're making that reentry. So, but your network is going to be super important, and that's where those groups and status updates and, you know, getting yourself out there, writing things. There's a lot of different ways around it. Don't get discouraged.
Thank you so much again, Daisy. And I think that was a great reminder for all of us. So, we will collect your questions if we haven't addressed them with Daisy right now, and we'll send them over to her this afternoon and hopefully get everybody's questions answered. But I do want to thank everybody for joining us today, and a special thank you to you, Daisy, for this presentation.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to have done that, and thanks to everybody for your great questions. Hang in there and do this.
Absolutely. So I am delighted to announce that our next webinar, which is titled The Why of Executive Coaching, will take place on December 9th. For more information about the webinar and to register, you visit careers.uchicagoalumni.org. And lastly, as a reminder, please watch your email for a link to the recording of today's presentation, along with a follow-up survey. If there are any other questions that you might have that you'd like Daisy to address or for us about the presentation, also do not hesitate to email us at alumnicareerprograms@uchicago.edu. So lastly, thank you again, Daisy. I'm really delighted to have you during this presentation today, and thanks to all of you for joining us, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.